Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Fas'alu ahla dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun. Okay, I wanted to start off today with a disclaimer. And the disclaimer is that there are some questions here that are suitable for adults only. And so if you have children listening, then I would advise you to move your children away when those questions come up. Again, this question and answer session is geared towards a mature adult audience, and it is not intended for children. So question number one is, if we are praying alone or somewhere not in a masjid, is it required to give adhan or iqama? What about if we are making up a prayer? Very good question. So there are two scenarios here. One scenario is that you are in a locality where there is a masjid, and you know that the adhan has already been given in the masjid. So in that case, you do not have to give the adhan separately. Giving the adhan is an emphasized sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, something the Prophet ﷺ did for every single prayer throughout his life, so that's why we call it an emphasized sunnah. However, the Prophet ﷺ did say, adhanul hayyi yakfina, that the adhan of the locality suffices for us. So if the adhan has been given in your locality, then you do not have to give adhan again if you are offering the prayer separately. However, you should give the iqama. It is optional to give the iqama, and it is better to give the iqama before you begin the prayer. If you are outside your locality in a place where you know there is no mosque, or you're not sure if there's a mosque or not, then it is a sunnah to give the adhan and offer the prayer. But if you for some reason cannot do that, then it is okay. The prayer is valid nonetheless. If you are making up a prayer, there is no adhan or iqama for making up prayers. So you just offer the prayer on its own with the intention of making up. There is no adhan or iqama for make-up prayers. Okay, next question. A non-Muslim told me that they consider the jizya tax discriminatory, but I am sure it was just. Can you elaborate on the jizya tax and its practice? So my question to my audience is that, is there any democracy in the world today that does not charge tax? Obviously the answer is going to be no. Is there any democracy that charges less than 2.5% in taxes? That's going to be no as well. The answer to that is no as well. So it's very important that we need to understand that Muslims were giving zakat already. Okay, Muslims had to give 2.5% of their savings. Those who were farmers, they had to give 1/10 of their crops. Apart from that, if you had animals, then you would have to give from the animals as well. So the Muslims were already giving zakat for the benefit of the public, in order to feed the poor and in order to benefit the poor. And apart from that, ushur was already in place. Ushur means the 1/10 that is given from the crops that are harvested at the end of the year. Now, there were specific reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mandated jizya upon the disbelievers living under Muslim protection. Number one, first and foremost, is so that the Muslim government would protect them. So just like we give tax today to our government, and in lieu of our taxes, the government provides protection for us. So if something happens, immediately we can call 911 and they will come to our aid. Anything happens, any sort of emergency, we can call 911, get to the hospital, call the ambulance. So all this is taken care of through taxes that we pay, which is way over 20%, 30% sometimes even, and even 40% taxes that we pay from our hard-earned money. On the other hand, in Islam, whatever you gave, whether it was zakat or jizya, it was from your savings. It was not from your earnings. Also, we need to understand that the jizya was taken from those who were of the age of being able to join the army, because non-Muslims were not obligated to join the Muslim army because of their beliefs, because their beliefs would not allow them to join the Muslim army. So another reason why jizya was taken from them was so that the Muslim can provide protection for them, and in return for that, they will not have to join in the Muslim army. Another reason for why jizya was obligated, it was to provide financial assistance to the needy among the non-Muslims. It is reported that Umar radiallahu anhu, once he passed by a Jewish old man who was on the streets, and Umar radiallahu anhu asked, and he said that he is homeless and he is financially in need. So immediately Umar radiallahu anhu had financial assistance provided for him through the public treasury, and the public treasury would get filled up through the zakat of the Muslims and through the jizya that was given into the treasury by the non-Muslims. Another reason was to provide public services. Just like in any democratic country, public services are provided for through our tax dollars. So jizya was stipulated so that public services can be provided to them, and of course the Muslims as well. So it was a way for the Muslim government to be able to collect enough money to provide for its citizens and the citizens whom they have been obligated to protect, which meaning the non-Muslims. And jizya is not something which is new. You'll find mention of jizya in the Old Testament and in the New Testament as well. As a matter of fact, it is mentioned in the New Testament when Isa alayhi salam, according to their reports, his enemies tried to test him to see how loyal he was to the government, and they wanted to prove disloyalty from Isa alayhi salam. So they came up to him and asked him about paying taxes to the Roman emperor of the time. And so he said, what is due to Allah, give it to Allah, and what is due to the emperor, give to the emperor. What is due to Caesar, give to Caesar. And so they were not able to charge him with being disloyal to the government. In the Old Testament, we see that Musa alayhi salam ordered his people to give jizya to the government. We have Joseph also, who ordered his people to give to the government, and Musa alayhi salam actually even charged his people. It's in the Torah, it's in the Old Testament. So this is not a new concept that Islam innovated or Islam introduced. It was something that was practiced by the non-Muslims even before Islam. It was practiced by the Christians, it was practiced by the Jews as well, and it was practiced by the earlier prophets as well. The amount of jizya was less than what Muslims were giving in zakat. It was less than 2.5%. As a matter of fact, Imam Abu Hanifa stipulated that they should be categorized into three categories. There are those who are very wealthy, then they should be charged more, and then those who are like moderate, middle class, they should be charged a bit less, and those who are who would fall into the lower bracket, they were to be charged the least amount. And like I said, it was less than what the Muslims were giving. So in my opinion, it is just, it was just, and the only, I guess, hint of discrimination we find here is that there was a separate term that was used for what was taken from the disbelievers than what was taken from the believers. So I guess that's the only thing I can think of that might be discriminatory with that. The term jizya was used for what was taken from the disbelievers, and a separate term was used for what was taken from the believers. As a matter of fact, I myself, when I first came to the U.S., I was on a visa. I had to pay more taxes than people that fell into my bracket and people who were like me. Why? Because I was not a citizen of the United States. I was non-American, and because I was non-American, I had to pay more taxes. And once I got my permanent residency, then I was able to apply the child tax credit. I was able to use my children and to get a deduction in my taxes. And I remember my accountant telling me that as soon as you get your permanent residency, you will have to pay less taxes, but until you get your permanent residency, you will have to pay more in taxes, and that's something which I can't do anything about. So over here, even in the United States, you have some people who are non-Americans, who are non-citizens. They have to pay more in taxes than their counterparts who are Americans, who are citizens. So, I mean, we both have the same rights, equal rights and everything, but when it comes to taxes, I had to pay more. Non-Americans have to pay more than Americans. So jizya was the other way around, where Muslims had to pay more, and the non-Muslims who were under the Muslim protection, they were actually paying less. As a matter of fact, I have here an excerpt from Deuteronomy, chapter 20, verses 10 to 15. It says here, when thou comest nigh unto a city to fight against it, then proclaim peace unto it. And it shall be, if it make thee answer of peace and open unto thee, then it shall be, that all the people that is found therein shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee. They shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee. Meaning that they will, tributary, meaning it's a word that was used for tax in those days, that they shall give you a tax. Okay, this is in Deuteronomy of the Old Testament. And if it will make no peace with thee, but will make war against thee, then thou shalt besiege it. And when the Lord thy God hath delivered it into thine hands, thou shalt smite every male thereof with the edge of the sword. But the woman and the little ones and the cattle and all that is in the city, even all the spoil thereof, shalt thou take unto thyself, and thou shalt eat the spoil of thine enemies, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. Thus shalt thou do unto all the cities which are very far off from thee, which are not of the cities of these nations. So now, I'm not a scholar of the Old Testament. I want to make that very clear. I am not a scholar of the Old Testament, and so I can't give an interpretation of these passages found in the Old Testament. However, taking it literally, like many Islamophobes do today, they take the Quran literally and they use it against us, they use it against Islam, they use it to create hatred. Just looking at this literally, you can see that even the Old Testament is ordering the Prophet to take tax from those who did not accept the religion. Okay, so, and there are so many other references to tax being taken from the Gentiles and etc. And you'll find that in the earlier scriptures. So, in my opinion, it was not discriminatory; it was just, and the amount that is taken was way less than 2.5% that the Muslims were already giving, and there is no democracy today in the world today that only takes 2.5% of your earnings. They take way more than that. Moving on to the next question, you said that the help of Allah comes right before the breaking point, right when you're about to reach the point where you can't take anymore. I've been struggling with something personal for a while, and it seems that I keep failing every time. Every time I fail, I'm devastated because I've put in so much hard work only for it to not to work out. Every time I tell myself that this is from Allah and to bear patience, because He has His wisdoms and He's keeping something away from me that wasn't meant for me. I tell myself this, and then I try something new, which also fails. If it weren't for my faith, I would have given up a long time ago. The only reason I feel like I haven't reached that breaking point yet is because I try to tell myself that the help of Allah is coming. So my confusion is, I feel like this faith in Allah's plan is what's keeping me away from the breaking point, which is in turn keeping me away from His help. As if I need to reach the point where I give up hope in order to get His help. But the only reason I haven't given up hope is because I'm waiting for His help, like a catch-22. I'm not sure if that made any sense or if I'm just being dumb. So you're not being dumb, that's for sure. This is something we're going to all struggle with to some extent till we die. All of us, whether you're an imam, whether you're the biggest scholar of the world, whether you're the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of us as human beings, as Muslims, we are going to struggle with this till we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is part of our struggle in this world. This is part of the purpose of our creation. So we're all going to go through these struggles that you've just described. And when I said that the help of Allah comes right at the breaking point or right before the breaking point, that is true, but we also have verses in the Qur'an that mention that Allah's help is with you all the time. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَانَ حَقًّا عَلَيْنَا نَصْرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَكَانَ حَقًّا عَلَيْنَا نَصْرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying it is obligatory upon us to help the believers. And in another place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَكُمْ. O those who have believed, if you help Allah, then Allah will help you and He will hold you steadfast. Okay, and then إِيَنْصُرُكُمُ اللَّهُ فَلَا غَالِبَ لَكُمْ. If Allah helps you, then nothing can overcome you. Nothing whatsoever. No situation, no circumstance, no person, no test, no exam, no career, no job, no boss. Nothing can overcome you if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps you. So basically, the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us all the time. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Wallahu fi awni al-abd ma dama al-abdu fi awni akhi," that Allah continues to be in the assistance of a person as long as he is assisting somebody else. Okay, so all we need to do is help others, and Allah will be helping us. And all we need to do is try our best to fulfill the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that way we will be helping Allah, we will be helping the religion of Allah, and His help will be with us. So remember, Allah's help is always with us. Allah's help is always with the believers. And so inshallah, that should help you find some solace that Allah's help is with me, and I don't have to reach the breaking point in order for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come. Now, at the same time, we have to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test us, each and every single person, differently and to different degrees. And what I probably mentioned was in context of a hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Anbiya alayhim assalam were tested the hardest, and then those who were the closest to the Anbiya, and then the closest. So when it comes to how hard our test is going to be, then the closer you are to Allah, the harder your test is going to be. And there's another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said to his followers, this is at the beginning, where he said that be patient on whatever hardship you're facing, you have to encounter from the disbelievers, because there were prophets before you who were sawed in half, or who were killed, or who were crucified, and who were massacred by their people, but you guys are hastening. You are hastening for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come. And there's a verse in the Qur'an that says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed Muslims to eat from the meat that is slaughtered by the people of the book. Similarly, they followed the same rules in terms of marrying. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed men to marry Christian and Jewish women because the conditions were the same. However, nowadays we know for sure that the Christians do not follow their book anymore because they are, according to them, they're no longer obligated to. And so that is why, because the conditions are not being fulfilled, that is why many scholars today do not allow meat that is available in the supermarkets. And so that is why a lot of Muslims follow that. Now, I don't want to get into the issue of who from geographically speaking, where Muslims from which part of the world eat what. Rather, I just want to look at it from the opinion perspective, the fiqh perspective. And the Jews, however, they continue to follow their books to some extent. So if meat is kosher, if it's certified kosher, and you know that the koshering authority said the name of Allah while slaughtering the animal, then that animal would be permissible. That meat would be, not animal, sorry, that meat would be permissible to consume from. Now, there's a lot more details to it, and it would take probably at least an hour to go over the fiqh and the various opinions that are out there. I don't have the time to go into that right now, but if you want to, inshallah, I'll be holding another class which is known as Chat Islam Out, and in that I can give one whole hour to just speaking about this issue, inshallah. So there's a lot more to it than just what I just mentioned. So what actually happened was that sometime around the 1950s and the 1960s, when a lot of Muslims started coming to the European countries and to the United States and Canada and to the Western countries to study, they were confronted with the issue of dietary restrictions, and so there were some scholars in Egypt in those days who came up with the opinion that as long as it is not pork, you can consume it, assuming that because it is a majority Christian country, a Christian would have slaughtered that animal, and so that is why it is permissible to consume meat of the people of the book, Christians and Jews, as long as it is not pork. So that opinion came about in the 1950s and 1960s, and a lot of Muslims today follow that. What do I follow? My opinion is I like to be on the safe side, and I like to make sure that the meat is zabihah, slaughtered by a Muslim, Christian, or a Jew, but taking the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the slaughter has to be from the neck, as the hadith mentioned. Many hadiths, almost to the almost reaching the status of tawatur. The hadith mentioned that has to be slaughtered from the neck. And as a matter of fact, there's a well-known hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man salla salatana wa akala zabihatana." So one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, defining a Muslim, what defines a Muslim? So man istaqbala qiblatana, whoever faces our qibla, and whoever offers our prayer the way we offer the prayer, and whoever eats from our zabihah, from the meat that the way that is slaughtered, the way Muslims slaughtered, فهو المسلم الذي عصم منا دماؤهم وأعراضهم أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, that his life and his property is sacred in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So anyways, continuing on to the next part, again, I would have to, there's a lot more details, fiqh details behind this question, behind this answer. I can, inshallah, have a separate session for that. What was the Prophet's response to those who claimed he was a sorcerer, magician, or said that the Wahi was magic? How did he refute them and convince them otherwise? This is a very interesting question. It reminds me of an incident in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where there was this person who had who was visiting Makkah al-Mukarramah, and he had heard about a person who people claimed that he was a sorcerer, or he was a magician, or that he was possessed by demons. And so he said, let me meet this person. I'm a person who can cure people who are possessed. So let me meet this person. I might be able to cure this person from this possession that he has, this demonic possession that he has. So he goes up to the Prophet ﷺ, and he introduces himself, and he says, I am here to help you. Um, what can I do? What can I do for you? And so the Prophet ﷺ looked at him, and he recited the same khutbatul hajah that is recited every Friday, or that is recited before weddings or during weddings. He said, "Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله." And then he recited the three main verses that are part of the khutbatul hajah. And then this person, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, say it again. What you just said, say it again. So the Prophet ﷺ repeated it. And all the while, this person was just staring at the Prophet ﷺ as if he was mesmerized by the Prophet ﷺ. And so then he said, repeat it. So the third time, the Prophet ﷺ repeated the same words over again. And then this person, he said that I have heard the works of sorcerers. I have seen the works of sorcerers. I have heard the words and the works of poets, and I am a poet myself. But I can tell you for sure that this is not the work of a sorcerer or the work of a magician. It is not magic. This person is not possessed. Rather, this is something that has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another similar incident where a person, where the disbelievers, they got together and they appointed the best among them, who was the most eloquent among them, to go and speak to the Prophet ﷺ to try to dissuade him from calling people to Islam. And so this person comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says to him, what can we do to help you stop doing this? You have created a lot of division amongst us, etc., etc. The Prophet ﷺ said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم حاميم تنزيل من الرحمن الرحيم كتاب فصلت آياته قرآنا عربيا لقوم يعلمون بشيرا ونذيرا فأعرض أكثرهم فهم لا يسمعون. And then he continued on and he recited at least about 10 ayat of the surah until he got to a point where the person said, stop, that's enough, that's enough. And then he went back to his people, and when he went back to his people, they immediately saw a different face. They knew that this person has come back with a different face than what he went with. And so he went and told them that I know the speech of poetry, Arabic poetry. I know the speech of the sorcerers, but what this person has come to you with is not poetry, it is not sorcery, it is not magic, it is a divine speech that he has come with. And so that's another incident. And so basically the Prophet ﷺ was very passive in his response to those who claimed that he was a sorcerer, magician. He used the Qur'an to refute them, and the Qur'an was irrefutable for them, because the Arabs in those days, they had pride over their language, because their language was so pure, was so eloquent. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ himself, and what they would do, what Banu Hashim used to do, and what other tribes used to do, is that as soon as the child was born, they would send the child with a nursing mother who would take the child to the mountain areas, to the mountain regions, where the child would grow up hearing only the purest form of Arabic. Why? Because Makkah in those days had slowly become a place of trade where people from outside would also come mix in. Other dialects would mix in with the Meccan dialect, and other people speaking other languages would also come in and trade with the people of Makkah. Jews would also come and trade with the people of Makkah. And so what was happening was slowly the purity of the Arabic language was getting lost. So what they would do was send their children to the mountainous regions so that they would pick up the most eloquent form of the Arabic language. So they knew their language better than anybody else. And so the Prophet ﷺ used the eloquence of the Qur'an to refute them. There's an incident where a person was reciting the Qur'an while he was reciting the Qur'an, the person who was not even a Muslim, he bowed down and he prostrated. And so people asked him, "Are you Muslim?" And he said, "No, I'm not. I'm not prostrating because I'm a Muslim. I'm prostrating to the power of this speech. This speech is just so powerful that it forced me to prostrate." So the Prophet ﷺ used the Qur'an. He would recite the Qur'an to them, and he knew that the Qur'an was irrefutable. The Qur'an, the speech of the Qur'an was such that they knew that no human being could come up with such a miraculous speech, and so that's how he was able to refute the disbelievers. I was taking a nap on campus and didn't have time to go home and do ghusl between exams. As a result, I missed multiple prayers. Meaning I didn't have time to take a shower or a bath between exams. As a result, I missed multiple prayers. What should I have done in this situation? So, number one, you have to be in the state of purity before you offer the prayer. Purity from major ritual impurity and from minor ritual impurity. Major ritual impurity is, for example, when you have a wet dream, you cannot pray until you take a bath or take a shower, and you have to remove the semen from your clothes wherever it is on your clothes. So, best thing for you to do is make up for the prayers, because if you had exams coming up and you did not have time to go home, then the best thing for you to do was to just go ahead, give the exams, and make up for the prayers later. Ideally, what you should normally do when you don't have exams or you can't delay the exams, what you should do is go home, take a shower, change your clothes. And when we say change your clothes, it means that you have to remove the impurity from your clothes. So if you're able to wash it off and then put the same clothes on, then that's okay as well. Like the Prophet ﷺ, he would wash it off and then go to the prayer with the same clothes, because it would have been removed. So you have to take a bath. But if you have exams and those exams are very important and you are not able to delay those exams, then it is okay. Just go ahead, take the exams, and make sure you make up for the prayers once you are done with the exam. So what you did was correct in that situation. But if it's a class, if it's not an exam and if it's just a class, then it's best that you go home and take a shower and wash yourself, and then try to get to class. A shower you can shower in a minute. Honestly, if you do it the Sunnah way, we waste just too much water when it comes to showering, when it comes to taking a bath. But if you're using a shower, you can do everything that is necessary to be done within a minute or two, and quickly change your clothes, and get back to campus. And it can be done. What you should do is try to minimize the number of prayers that you miss, and just try to minimize the damage as much as possible. So make sure you make up for the prayer. And I actually did a fiqh class on purification just last semester. We went over all the fiqh issues concerning when is bath necessary, and etc. etc. and how to deal with conditions, issues like these. The next question: I'm worried that I won't be able to please my future wife when it comes to things like kissing and other relations, because I, alhamdulillah, do not have any experience with relationships in the past. Is this a valid concern to have? To be honest, I had the same concern. I think everybody has this same concern, and it's a concern that everybody's gonna have. Don't let it consume you, because it's not something to be consumed with. If it's at a minor level, then it's okay. But at the end, inshallah, you will end up pleasing your wife. Inshallah, as long as you are able to, you have everything that it takes to please your wife. And so it's a concern that naturally every man has, every teenager would have, every youth would have. But don't let it consume you. It's just one of those things that you will be able to learn through experience. As a matter of fact, I recommend taking premarital classes on learning about it, theoretically learning about it as much as possible. What I say to people is that we spend $40,000-$50,000 on weddings. Why not spend at least $500 and go to a therapist and learn about the psychology of relationships, and learn about how to please your wife. There's so much literature out there, and there are so many ways we can learn this. I actually have a pamphlet that I give to couples that come to me. So if you want, I can give you a pamphlet, or you can anonymously email me, and I can send you a copy if you don't want to come to me one-on-one and ask for it. So there are ways to educate yourselves premaritally. I have classes as well, premarital classes, that I usually give to couples before they get married. And if they ask me, then I also talk about these issues as well. If they're comfortable and they ask me, then I will talk about it. It's a concern that everybody has. It's nothing to worry about. Don't let it consume you. One of the things I would like to emphasize before I move on is that because Muslims, we're not supposed to have premarital relations. So what usually ends up happening is that when we get married, we sort of struggle with relating to each other. We struggle with communicating with our spouses. Why? Because we're so used to communicating with our guy friends, or females are so used to communicating with their female friends that it becomes a whole different ball game altogether. It's like you're in a whole different world. And so what I highly recommend, is to take a premarital class where you learn how to communicate with the opposite gender, or with your spouse, how to successfully communicate, and to learn the psychology of the opposite gender. I think this is something that we should, even if you spend $2,000-$3,000 on it, go to an expert therapist and learn these things. It is well worth it, because it is for your future. You will be with your spouse for the next 60, 70, 80 years. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and so it is worth the investment. If you're going to spend $50,000 on pleasing other people, so that you can invite as many people as possible to your wedding, and to have the best hotel and the 5-star hotel possible, then why not spend a couple of extra $1,000 and learn from the experts how to have a successful relationship with your wife in terms of your sexual life, your intimate life, in terms of communication, in terms of understanding the other person, the psychology of your spouse, and when it comes to things like kissing and other relations, a lot of it comes through experience, to be honest. And this is where both spouses have to be very, very understanding of each other, and because your spouse would also be in the same situation as you are, so that understanding will already be there. And so there's a lot of clumsiness involved, especially if it's your first time. But like I said, experience teaches you a lot. So it's not something to be consumed about. Rather, what I would do is, before getting married, take premarital classes, go to family therapists, go to expert therapists, and learn how to be intimate with your spouse. Dumb question: can a woman recite Quran out loud in front of a non-mahram? So the majority opinion is that the voice of a woman is not aura. Aura means something that needs to be concealed. There's only one opinion in one of the schools of thought, and it's not the only opinion in that school of thought. There's one opinion in the Shafi'i school of thought that says that the voice of a woman is aura, meaning it needs to be concealed. But the dominant opinion in the Shafi'i school, and the only opinion in the other schools of thought, is that the voice of a woman is not an aura. It is not, what do you call it, something that needs to be concealed. So, and we learned that from the Qur'an, that the wives of the Prophet, they would speak to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in from behind a curtain, min wara'i hijab. وَإِذَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُنَّ مَتَاعًا فَاسْأَلُوهُنَّ مِن وَرَاءِ hijab. If you need to ask them for anything, ask them from behind the curtain. So we know that from the Qur'an that the voice of a female is not something that needs to be concealed. Can she recite the Qur'an in front of non-mahram, in front of those? Now what is something that I would not prefer is to recite in a melodious tone, in a tone that, like, to go out of your way and to recite in a melodious tone, just to be on the safe side. It's not haram, but just to be on the safe side, it is better not to. But other than that, if you're just reciting in your normal tone, then there is nothing wrong with that. Okay, next question. By the way, it's not a dumb question. It's a very intelligent question. Is masturbation without watching illicit content okay if it prevents you from committing zina? Zina means fornication. So the default ruling in Islam concerning masturbation, and again, this requires a lot of details, a lot of explanation, but I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. The default ruling in Islam is that masturbation is not allowed. And now a lot of people think that, okay, masturbation is not allowed, then that means when I get married, I cannot masturbate with my wife. So let me make that very clear. Mutual masturbation among spouses is permissible. Okay, it's just that is not categorized as masturbation in Islam, but in the West, that is also considered to be masturbation. So mutual masturbation within spouses is allowed. As a matter of fact, it is recommended, something that you should do as part of foreplay. Again, if there are children watching, I would recommend that you not let your children watch this or listen to this. This is for a mature audience. So mutual masturbation is something that is recommended as part of foreplay. As a matter of fact, Imam Abu Hanifa, it is reported that he said that it is preferable for the spouses to play, and I quote unquote, the word he uses, play with each other's genitalia. So mutual masturbation is permissible among spouses. When it comes to self-masturbation, the default ruling is that it is not allowed, but there are certain situations where it can become permissible. Like, for example, if you're in a scenario where, don't ask why, but just say a person is in a position where he is in bed with somebody of the opposite gender, okay, and he is about to commit fornication. So instead of committing fornication, he masturbates. So in that case, in that scenario, you follow the lesser of the two evils, and you masturbate in order to protect yourself from committing fornication. So in that scenario, it would become obligatory to masturbate. In other scenarios where you're not in that position, but you are very close to engaging in illicit relationship with somebody whom you're not married to, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and I don't want anybody to abuse what I say. Only to the extent of necessity. It is allowed if you know for sure that if you don't do it, you will fall into committing illicit relationships with somebody whom you're not married to. So again, I don't want my statement to be abused by people, but there is a statement in fiqh that says الضرورة تتقدر بقدر الضرورة, that something that is necessary, it is confined to the extent of it being necessary. It is confined to necessity. So to the extent that it is necessary, then it can be permissible. And this is where I would like to plead. I plead and I beg to the parents not to be so strict when it comes to allowing your children to get married, because a lot of times parents will say, no, you have to complete your PhD first, then you can only get married. And you can enter into your 30s by the time you complete your PhD, or you have to be a doctor first, complete your residency, and then once you're settled, then only can you get married. And you can be well into your 30s by the time you're done with all that stuff. So this is where a lot of times parents become an obstacle in the way of children enjoying life, and enjoyment is taken away. Our children are deprived of permissible enjoyment that they are entitled to, and the parents come in the way of that, and a lot of youth end up committing haram. This person at least asked for the ruling. A lot of youth end up committing haram, and they feel really bad about it, but at the same time they can't really control themselves as well. And so it's very important that the option be there on the table to have an early marriage. Now, I don't recommend early marriages for everybody, but for some people it may be the best thing. For some it may even be obligatory. If you're in a state where you are constantly masturbating, then it may become obligatory for you to get married. And when something becomes obligatory, then even your parents cannot stop you from doing that. So you're allowed to disobey your parents and get married if you're in a situation where you are committing haram, because the books of fiqh mention وَعِنْدَ التُّقَانِ wajib, that when a person is in a state of desperation, sexual desperation, it becomes obligatory to get married. And like I said earlier, parents become an obstacle in this. They have no idea what we have to go through, what youth go through on campus, and it's difficult. I see your struggle, and I wish I could do something about it. I try my best. I talk about it as much as possible. I get in trouble by parents as well when I talk about it. But I think this is something that parents need to be more open about. Instead of just dismissing it altogether, at least bring it to the table arrangements can be made because alhamdulillah, one good thing about our culture is that we give a lot of emphasis to marriage. Even, I was surprised that in Turkey, even after a century of secularization, after a century of living a secular life, being under secular rule, almost a century has passed. But one thing that has not become secular is marriage. Marriage is still a very, very important part of the Turkish culture. And alhamdulillah, every other culture that is out there, marriage is a very, very important part of our culture. But sometimes we allow the culture to override our religion, and sometimes we let it override our basic rights, the rights that every human being is entitled to. And so arrangements can be made that youth can get married and not even have jobs. I mean, they can still be studying, and they can still continue with their independent lives, but be married. Be married in such a way that the boy will continue to live with his parents, the girl will continue to live with her parents, and you can get the marriage done, and there will be a prenuptial agreement that the husband will not be obligated to provide for his wife until he graduates and until he has a job. Meanwhile, they can just meet up with each other when they're on campus or during the weekend, or they can travel and meet up with each other if they're in different states or different cities. And I know students who have done that, students in the past who have done that, and it really worked out really well. So that option should at least be open and brought to the table when talking about marriage to your youth, instead of dismissing it altogether. Now, I'm not trying to encourage early marriages for everyone. Like I said, early marriage is not for everyone, but it is for some people out there. And if you find yourself in a position where you are constantly masturbating, then you have to get married, even if your parents don't allow you to get married. You're allowed to disobey your parents in that situation. Is spending lavishly? Are we out of time? Okay, I'm sorry. We are out of time. And, it's actually time for the Isha prayer. So let's have a very quick dua. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa salli ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqihi Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.